All right, everyone, settle in. All right, everyone, settle in. We're diving deep today. We're looking at the hidden blueprints of history, the idea that what we call civilization was actually a series of carefully constructed architectural and spiritual handoffs between much older, much more shadowy players.
And let me tell you, looking at these early chapters of the hymn, it's heavy. It's like looking at the wiring behind the walls of the world.
And some of those wires are definitely sparking, Emily. I'm really feeling the energy in the room already.
Can we just get to the text? My brain is already running a marathon.
Right, so we're starting with this incredible imagery of the lion. The authors are pulling from Night here, talking about how in pagan mysteries, the lion represents overcoming death and achieving personal immortality of the human spirit.
It's so visceral. It's a physical conquest, not a metaphor.
Exactly, and look how they bridge it to the Rosicrucians. They claim the lion is the sun, and that this solar phallic force is actually tied to the serpent power, the kundalini rising during sexual magic.
Okay, now we're talking. That's the draconian connection we've talked about before, right? That primitive fiery foundation.
Precisely. It's about balancing elemental forces to move from lunar to planetary. And then this is where it gets really wild. They bring in alchemy. They describe a sacred wedding of sun and moon symbolized by a lion-headed serpent.
A lion-headed serpent. That sounds like something straight out of a fever dream.
But they link it directly to Egypt. They say this is how the Egyptians depicted the dark solar god Set.
Wait, so the darkness isn't just absence of light, it's a specific structured force?
Exactly. And they claim this union produces a magical child, a pre-Adamic, perfect androgynous being. They even quote a vision of a gemstone falling from a crown of the fallen son of light.
Talk about a high-stakes cosmic drama.
It's all very much. But let's look at the transition to the more mainstream figures. They bring up Jesus here, calling him the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
And they immediately challenge the standard astrological reading. Most people say, oh, he was born under Leo. But the authors say, no, it's much deeper. They argue it's about his connection to the ancient Egyptian mysteries and the lineage of sacred lion kings.
So it's not an accident of the stars. It's a deliberate inheritance of a much older, much more royal bloodline of magic.
Which leads us straight to Heliopolis, the whole dying god archetype.
Right? They're connecting Abuth to Osiris. They point out that the gates where Abuth was struck were the western gates where the sun sets. And in Egyptian myth, the underworld is in the Western Ocean.
It's all connected. The geography of the soul is mapped onto the geography of the earth.
It is, and look at the Dionysian masters. The authors claim this group of architects and builders the precursors to the Masons used sacred geometry to make temples that actually represented the human body.
That's the microcosm-macrocosm thing. The temple is the man.
Yes. They even quote Kirker saying if you stretch your limbs in a cross, the center is your navel. If you fold your legs, it's your phallus. And they claim Noah built the ark and Solomon built the temple using these exact human proportions.
So basically the universe is just a giant cosmic anatomy lesson.
It's a bit much, Paco. But here's where the authors get controversial. They start talking about the construction of Solomon's temple. They claim it wasn't just a Jewish project.
They're pulling in BW. Anderson here saying the temple was an invasion of Canaanite culture into the heart of Israel. They're suggesting the plans were nearly identical to Egyptian temples, and that the offerings sent to Tyre looked suspiciously like fertility rites.
So the monotheistic temple might have actually been a temple to the old gods?
They go even further. They mention the scholar Raphael Patai, who argues that for over half of the temple's existence, a statue of Asherah, a fertility goddess, was actually inside the temple.
Ah, man, the official history is just a thin veneer, isn't it?
It's a complete subversion. They're saying Solomon, the great king, was essentially keeping the old pagan ways alive under the guise of Yahweh.
And they back it up with the Bible itself. They point to the verses where Solomon's wives turned his heart to other gods, like Astarte. The holy site was actually a hyperplace of incense for Baal and Ant.
Wait, so the authors are essentially claiming that the Holy of Holies wasn't a place of pure monotheism, but a hidden sanctuary for the very pagan forces the prophets were trying to destroy?
That's exactly the claim. They see the temple not as a religious victory, but as a site of deep, hidden syncretism.
It's like finding out your favorite clean restaurant is actually running a secret underground speakeasy in the basement.
If that's true, then the three temples theory at the end of this section, that changes everything.
It does. They say there's a first temple, the physical universe, a second temple, the human body, and a third and unseen temple, not made by human hands.
The hidden church of the Holy Grail.
And the craziest part, they say the stones for this third temple weren't cut by men, but by a supernatural serpent-like creature called the Shamir.
A worm-cutting stone? Okay, I'm officially spooked.
Well, don't get too spooked yet, Paco. we still got the Sarikset to deal with.
Okay, let's pick back up. We were just talking about the unseen temple and that strange Shamir worm. But the authors bring us back to the physical site, the actual construction of Solomon's temple, and they drop a bombshell about how it was built.
They're not talking about pulleys and levers, are they?
Not even close. They mention a document from Alexandria that claims Egyptian priests used magic to command the spirits of the elements. They literally say they moved massive stones through the air, stones that thousands of men could not lift.
See, this is why I don't trust construction quotes. Oh, we'll just use some elemental spirits, it'll be fine, very cost effective.
It's more than the weight, though. Look at the brazen sea. The authors describe this massive bronze basin decorated with lilies resting on 12 oxen.
12 oxen facing the cardinal directions? That's so cosmic.
And here's the heavy hitter. They quote Manly Palmer Hall. He says this: sea isn't just a bowl, it's an allegory. He claims the soul, cast from a fiery golden metal, was poured into a clay mold, the physical body, and named the Brazen Sea.
So the bronze basin is a metaphor for the human body? That's wild.
It ties back to what we said earlier about the sacred wedding of forces. The smithy, the forge, the molten metal. It's about the transmutation of the soul.
Exactly. It's the divine spark of the forge. But then, and this is where it gets messy, the authors move from the magic to the melodrama. They claim the Queen of Sheba actually fell in hyper love with Hiram Abeth while she was visiting Solomon.
Of course, because why have a cosmic architectural feat without a scandalous love triangle?
And it gets darker. When Solomon finds out, he supposedly hires 3 stonemasons to assassinate his rival.
Wait, so the architect of the temple is getting taken on by the king's hitmen? Talk about a bad work environment.
It's brutal. But let's look at the pillars. Jachin and Boaz. They aren't just random columns. The authors say they were copies of Egyptian obelisks, like the ones from Heliopolis.
And they're decorated with pomegranates, apples from the tree of knowledge.
Right. And these pillars represent the connection between heaven and earth. They mention that similar double pillars were found in the Temple of Astarte in Tyre and Bydwash places tied to the worship of Osiris.
So we're back to the same pattern. These Jewish pillars are actually echoes of much older, much more pagan structures.
It's like every time we think we've found a stable foundation, the authors pull a rug out from under us.
Speaking of rugs, hold on, guys. Oh, that's probably my delivery. I ordered those exotic fruits I was talking about earlier. I need the sugar.
Go ahead, Emily. We'll wait.
Okay, I'm back. Mango is here. My soul is revitalized. Where were we?
We were talking about the pillars representing the struggle between light and dark, or specifically, the pillars of Set and Horus.
Which, if you follow the thread, leads us straight to the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland.
Now that is a place. I've always found the carvings there deeply unsettling.
And for good reason. The authors argue Rosslyn is a physical synthesis of everything we've been discussing. Masonry, Templar traditions, Celtic paganism, even Gnosticism.
They mention the Green Man carvings there, hundreds of them.
Exactly. These leave masked figures of fertility. The authors suggest they represent the dying gods of the Near East. And then, they link it to St. George, who, surprisingly, is also linked to the figure of Hydra.
So St. George is basically a very specialized version of a pagan deity?
The authors say so. They even connect the date of St. George's Day to the feast of Haida and Tammuz. It's all this overlapping, layered history.
And they even bring in the spear of destiny, Longinus, the Roman soldier who pierced Jesus. They claim his weapon was forged by Tubal Cain.
Every time we think we're tracing a straight line, we end up in a web.
And the web gets even tighter when they talk about the Sinclair family. They claim the Sinclairs were protectors of the Masons and the Templars, and that the chapel itself might be a memorial to heretical beliefs.
They even found a carving of a Knight Templar performing a Masonic initiation.
It's all one continuous hidden stream. But look at this final eerie note in this section. The apprentice pillar in Rosslyn.
The one where the apprentice kills the master?
Yes. An apprentice, driven by envy because his master left the work unfinished, completes the pillar himself only to be beaten to death by the master when he returns.
That is incredibly dark, even for this show.
It's a brutal end to a section about building the sacred, but it leaves us with that image of the widow's son, the victim of the master's rage hanging over the entire idea of architectural legacy.
It makes you wonder, if the architecture is meant to be a map of the soul, what does a murdered apprentice say about the path to enlightenment?
That is exactly the question we need to carry into the next chapter.
If we keep digging into this, we're going to need more than just willpower to survive the shadows.
Speaking of survival, the Persian delivery just hit the doorstep.